Hello, welcome to the Simplifying Complex Numbers lesson. Today's lesson we're going to have 4 problems, so it might take a little bit longer than usual, but I'll try to get through it as quickly and as simply as possible so that you guys won't spend like 15 minutes watching one video. But here we go. Okay, so this first problem we're going to be doing foiling. Yeah, so basically taking this first binomial, 3 plus 8i, and multiplying it to negative 1 plus 4i. Yeah. So this is the way when I described it in class where we're going to do like distribution twice. So we're going to multiply 3 with the negative 1 and 3 with the 4i. And then we're going to do 8i with negative 1 and 8i with 4i. Yeah. So first we're going to do basically like that foiling. So we're going to go 3 times negative 1. And then we're going to do plus 3 times 4i. And then plus again, 8i times negative 1. And notice in between all these parentheses we put a plus sign, yeah? So make sure you guys do that also when you guys connect all these things that you're multiplying together. And then last you're going to go 8i times 4i. Okay, so I know it's a lot to write out, but I like to write out more so that you guys can see the little steps that happen in between. Okay, so 3 and negative 1, that's going to make negative 3. And then plus, and 3 and 4i, that makes 12i. And then plus again, and 8i and negative 1, so that makes negative 8i. Yeah, so the plus and negative that you see here, whenever you have two signs like this right next to each other, a plus and a minus sign, you can pretty much just ignore the plus sign. So since I'm going to ignore it, I'm just going to erase it. Yeah, so we just have a negative 8i there. Okay, and last, plus again, and 8 and 4, that's 32. And then I times I, that makes I squared. So there's going to be something that you might have forgotten how to do with this I squared, and it's the conversion. Yeah, so hopefully you remember this conversion. So I'll change the color so it stands out, and the conversion that I want you to remember is I squared can be converted or replaced by negative 1. Okay, so you see this I squared that's right here. Yeah, this I squared that's right there. We're about to change that or replace it with the negative 1. So that's going to be my next step. So I'm going to be doing a couple of things. I'm going to combine like terms in this line right here. So who are my like terms? These guys are my like terms. Yeah, the negative 3 has nobody to combine with, so I'm just going to leave it as negative 3 for now. But the positive 12i and the negative 8i, when they combine, yes, since they're like terms, right, they both have the single I, so they're like terms. You're just basically going to go 12 minus 8. So what is 12 minus 8? It's a positive 4. Yeah, and your I doesn't disappear when you combine single variables just like that. Oops, trying to erase that dot. When you want to combine these variables, these like terms rather, the letters don't disappear, just your numbers change. You add the numbers in front of the letters. Okay, and then for the last part, so we have that I squared. So now let's deal with that issue. So we're going to write plus 32. Yeah, but the I squared, we're going to change it into a negative 1. So we're going to replace the I squared by a negative 1. Yeah. So just like with money, yeah, if you want to, when you go to a cashier, you say, oh, can I change my $20 bill into a 10 and 2 5s? Yeah, where you have the same value, it just looks different. So that's what's happening here. The I squared is going to turn into a negative 1. Yeah, and that's one of the conversions that we have in math. So when we turn that into a negative 1 and we combine it with the 32, the positive 32 that is, that's going to turn the entire thing into negative 32. Yeah, so the negative 3 stays the same, the plus 4i stays the same. Okay, but now we have like terms again. So negative 3 and negative 32, they're like terms. So when they combine, they make negative 35. So negative 35 plus 4i. Okay, and since this is what you call a complex number, yeah, a complex number is known as a real number, which is the negative 35, plus an imaginary number. So that's the 4i. So whenever you have these two different types of numbers in the same answer, you want to make sure you put the real number first, followed by the imaginary number second. So please remember that. You don't want to reverse it. You don't want to write the imaginary number first and the real number second. You always want to put it in this order. Okay? So try to remember that, please. Okay, so this is your final answer. All right, so on to the next problem. Okay, so this is going to be very, very similar to the previous problem. The only difference is that it has this little squared thing right there. So that little squared thing means we basically have 5 plus 6i. We have it twice. Yeah, so we're going to write it twice because that's what the squared means. We have it twice. And it looks just like the previous problem, right? We're going to have foiling again, so we're going to go 5 times 5 and 5 times 6i. And 6i times 5 and 6i times 6i. So you pretty much see something very similar to the previous problem. The only thing is it starts off looking different. Yeah, it wasn't written as two different binomials multiplied. It was the same thing squared. So it ends up being the same kind of steps. It just starts off looking different. So when we do 5 times 5, right, we have 5 times 5. And then we have 5 times 6i. Oops, forgot the parentheses. And then we have 6i times 5. And then we have 6i times 6i. Okay? And notice, in between all of these multiplying of the parentheses, we have plus signs in between all of them. So don't remember to connect all of these things with plus signs. Okay? So let's do this multiplication. So 5 and 5 is 25. And then we have plus 5 and 6 is 30. And the I just goes in the back end. Plus again. And 5 and 6 is 30 again. With the I on the back end. And then plus. And 6 and 6 is 36. And I makes your I squared. So this is where we have to make sure we remember we got our conversion right. And I said it on the previous problem. I squared is known as -1. Okay, so don't forget about that. Okay, so let's do our like terms. So our like terms are right here. Positive 30i. Oops, how come it's not writing? Oh, you gotta get it back to pen mode. Positive 30i. Ooh, that's blue. I kind of wanted a different color, so I'll just change it back. Okay, so these are my like terms. So positive 30, positive 30. Okay, this 25 is not going to change, but the positive 30 makes a positive 60i. And then the 36i squared on the very, very end. Remember what happens to that I squared? Yeah, it changes to a -1 because that's your conversion, so don't forget about that. Okay? All right, so let's see what happens in our next step. So we're gonna combine the positive 36 and a -1. That's gonna make -36. And the 25 and the 60i, they're not like terms because this 25 doesn't have an I, so it just stays the same. Plus 60i. Yeah, so now that we have this next step, let's look for like terms. So positive 25, -36, those are my regular numbers. They're my like terms. So 25 minus 36 is -11. And then the 60i doesn't have a like term to combine with, so I'll just leave them as positive 60i. Okay, and don't forget now, it's a complex number. Complex numbers are made up of real numbers, which is -11, and imaginary numbers, which is this guy right here. Yeah, and you always want to put the real number in the front, the imaginary number in the back. Okay, all right, so let's move on to problem 3. Okay, so notice this is very different, and a lot of students always mess this up. Yeah, they forget that there's a minus sign right there, so they still think it's business as usual. They want to FOIL, and they want to do 6 times -5, 6 times -8i, and -4 times -5, and -4i times -8i. So they want to do what we just did the previous two problems, but you can't because there's a minus sign there. So because of that minus sign, it actually makes this problem way easier. Because all you're going to do is you're going to take this negative sign, and you're going to give it to the -5. You're going to take the negative sign, and you're going to give it to the -8i. So when I say give it, I mean pretty much like multiply to it. Yeah, and we're not going to give this negative sign to the 6 and the -4i because, yeah, it's this negative sign is in the back. Yeah, he doesn't have anything in the front of him. Yeah, there's just this blank spot right there. So 6 and -4i, they just pretty much stay the same, unchanged. Okay, but when this negative sign is given to the -5, some things are going to change, right? So a negative and a negative, right? When I get the negative to him, it's going to be negative, so that makes +5. And then when this negative is given to the -8i, same thing. So negative here, that's going to make +8i. Yeah. So now we're on the step that it's involving like terms. So we got like terms here, -4i, +8i, that's like terms. And we also have real numbers. These guys are like terms also, 6 and +5. Okay. So let's combine like terms, 6 and 5, that makes 11. And -4i, positive 8i, that's going to be +4i. Yeah, and once again, you want to make sure which number goes in the front? The real number. Yeah, and your imaginary number goes second. So keep that in mind. Don't forget about that. That's kind of important. Okay. All right, so remember now, key difference in this problem is there's a minus sign between these two sets of parentheses. So we don't got a FOIL. We want to just give this negative to the -5, give the negative to the -8, and that changes the appearance of the numbers, right? It's now become +5, and now it's going to be +8i. So don't forget about that. That's the important part of this problem. Okay? All right, on to the last problem. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on here. So we're going to do order of operations, yeah? We're going to add these things, add the front side to the back side last. So first we're going to do individual multiplication. So this first multiplication, we're going to do distribution, right? So we're going to go 6i times that and 6i times that. Okay? And the second half of the problem, we're going to just multiply these guys together. It's not going to be any kind of distribution because it's just a single term times a single term. Okay, this first part was a single term 6i times a binomial, so that's why we have to have two of these little rainbow thingies, yeah? So we're going to go 6i times -8, and then plus again, right? Remember how I always put the plus sign between the two parentheses that I always made? And then 6i times 8i, okay? And then here's the plus sign that's right here that I'm going to write right here. So this plus sign right here is the same thing as that plus sign right there. Okay, then I'm going to go 4i times -2i. So 4 times -2, that's -8. And I times I, that's I squared. So now we have a plus sign and a minus sign right next to each other, just like we did in the first problem, I think. So what did I tell you guys when we have plus and minus signs right next to each other? Can we ignore one? You remember which one I said we could ignore? Right, we can ignore a plus sign. So whenever we have a plus sign and a minus sign right next to each other, we can ignore the plus sign. We can pretend like it's not even there. Yeah? So this back end is just pretty much -8i squared. Ooh, 8i squared. Does that ring a bell? Does that remind you about something that we need to make sure we take into account? And if it does sound like there's something that we should remember, it's basically the conversion, right? So I squared is known as what again? -1, so don't forget about that, yeah? Okay, so we can add that in the next step. So let's see what's going to happen. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in this next step, so make sure you guys pay attention. Okay, so this first one, we're going to multiply again. Okay, so positive times a negative is a negative, and 6 times 8, that's 48. Okay, and then the I right there. Yeah, and it doesn't become I squared because this -8 didn't have an I, so it was just a regular single I right there. Okay, then we got the plus sign right there, so this plus sign, that plus sign, same thing. And then 6 and 8, that's going to make 48 again. And then, ooh, I times I, that's going to be I squared. Okay, and then we have this -8i squared in the back. Okay, so we got a lot of stuff going on, so we're going to replace these two I squareds with -1, so let's not forget about that little thing that we have to remember how to do. Okay, so -48i stays the same, plus 48 times -1 minus 8 times -1. Yeah, so these two I squareds, right, changes to -1. So I replace both of them with -1. Okay, and let's see how that plays out. So -48i, and then positive 48 and -1 is going to make -48, and -8 and -1, that's going to make +8. Yeah, so far so good. You're keeping track of what's going on. Okay, good thing this is a video, yeah. It's not live and in class where you can't just push rewind and you can rewind what I'm saying. So this is a video, so you're more than welcome to rewind anytime you guys want. Yeah, so don't forget about that if I go too fast. Okay, so these guys are like terms. Yeah, because they're just regular numbers, right? This guy doesn't have a like term because what is everybody else missing that he has? He has this I, right? These guys don't have the I, so they're not like terms. These guys are just my like terms. So when I combine these like terms, -48, +8, that makes -40. And then we got -48i. So what happens if I try to submit my answer as is? Am I going to get full credit? What do you think? Well, the very fact that I'm asking that question tells you, he wouldn't be asking that question if I wasn't going to get full credit if I leave it like this. So what am I supposed to do to get the full credit? Well, you got to make sure you put the real number first, followed by the imaginary number. So real first, then imaginary. This is my real number right here, -40. Then I'm going to follow it up with my imaginary number, -48i. And then you have the proper format. So that's your final answer. Okay, so sorry about the video being a little bit longer than usual, but it was a lot more problems than usual also. So hope you guys understood everything, and I'll see you in class online. Bye-bye.